Here's something that'll mess with your head. Right now, as you're watching this, there are creatures living deep in our ocean that are larger and heavier than most land animals you'd ever encounter, and have eyes the size of basketballs. And they're living in a place where the pressure alone would be instantly fatal without protection. I'm talking about the deep ocean, a place so hostile that it makes the surface of Mars look welcoming. Down there, it's pitch black, freezing cold, and the pressure can exceed 70 times atmospheric pressure. Food is scarce, oxygen conditions can be low or highly variable depending on depth and region, and by every logical rule, it seems like conditions that would be lethal to unadapted surface life. And yet, life doesn't just survive down there, it gets massive. Impossibly massive. We're talking about colonies stretching longer than school buses, squids that can weigh several hundred pounds and have hooks that rotate like biological bear traps, shrimp larger than most house cats' heads, and worms, worms, that can grow as tall as a human and don't even have mouths. The deeper you go, the weirder it gets, and the bigger everything becomes. It's like nature looked at the most inhospitable place on Earth and said, you know what? Let's make everything here absolutely gigantic just to mess with people. So today, we're going on a journey. We're descending through every layer of the ocean, meeting the giants that call each zone home, and trying to answer one simple question. Why in the world does everything get so freakishly huge down there? Strap in. This is going to get weird. Most people think of the ocean as just ocean. Blue water, some fish, maybe a shark or two. But the reality is that the ocean is divided into 5 distinct zones, each with its own rules, its own ecosystem, and its own brand of nightmare fuel. The first 656 feet is called the epipelagic zone, or the sunlight zone. This is the ocean you know. Coral reefs, colorful fish, sea turtles, dolphins. It's where the majority of ocean productivity and familiar marine life exists. It's beautiful, it's relatively safe, and honestly, it's boring compared to what's below. Because once you cross that threshold, you've entered the mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone. Light starts to fade here. The water gets colder, the pressure increases. And this is where we start seeing our first hints of deep-sea gigantism. This zone extends down to 3,280 feet, and it's here that one of the ocean's strangest phenomena occurs, the daily vertical migration. Every single night, billions of organisms rise from the depths to feed near the surface, then retreat back down at dawn. This migration is so massive, so dense, that early sonar operators actually mistook it for the seafloor. They thought they'd found the bottom of the ocean, but it was just an absurd amount of life moving in unison. And it's also here that we encounter our first giant. Imagine you're in a submarine, descending past the 2,300-foot mark. The familiar blue has long since faded to black. The only light comes from your vessel, and maybe some faint bioluminescent shimmering in the distance. The pressure has already exceeded 70 atmospheres, far beyond what an unprotected human body could survive. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, you see it. A giant, shiny, translucent floating spine drifting through the darkness like some kind of alien spaceship. Say hello to Praia Dubia, our first deep-sea giant. Now, calling this thing a creature is actually complicated, because Praia Dubia isn't really an individual animal. It's a colony of clones called zooids, all linked together to form something that acts like a single organism. Think of it like this. You have different body parts that do different things, right? Your mouth eats, your lungs breathe, your heart pumps blood. Well, Praia Dubia works the same way, except each body part is technically its own separate organism. Some zooids handle movement, others focus on feeding, some deal with reproduction, and none of them can survive alone. They need each other to function as a whole, and what a whole it is. Praia Dubia is estimated to reach over 130 feet when fully extended. That's longer than a blue whale. longer than most buses, and yet most people have never even heard of it. Unlike a blue whale, which is loud and active and breaches the surface, Praia dubia just drifts, silently, through the eternal darkness, trailing its long bioluminescent tendrils like deep-sea cobwebs, waiting for small crustaceans, gelatinous creatures, or fish to brush against its stinging cells and become paralyzed. It's beautiful, it's alien, and it's just the beginning. As we descend further, past 3,280 feet, we've now fully entered the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. Here, the temperature drops to around 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure climbs into the hundreds of atmospheres, enough to destroy most unprotected equipment. And not even a single ray of sunlight makes it down here. The only light you'll see comes from the bizarre life forms that have made this place their home. And it's here, in this perpetual night, that we might encounter one of the ocean's most elusive phantoms, Stygiomedusa gigantea, the giant phantom jelly. This massive jellyfish is almost mythic in its rarity. It's only been observed a little over 100 times historically, making it exceptionally rare, which is insane, because this thing is not small. Its bell, basically the head, approaches 3 feet across. Impressive, sure, but it's the arms that are truly freakish, and I say arms rather than tentacles because it doesn't have tentacles. Instead, it has 4 massive oral arms that stretch up to 33 feet in length, flowing behind it like a ghostly crimson curtain. Without tentacles, it has no stingers. So how does it feed? Here's the creepy part. It just engulfs prey, like a living net. Those massive arms wrap around unfortunate fish or squid, completely surrounding them, and then slowly draw them into its mouth. This seemingly delicate, jelly-filled creature is actually one of the largest invertebrate predators in the deep sea, competing directly with squids, whales, and other large deep-sea invertebrates. But speaking of squids, if you think the phantom jelly is scary, wait until you meet this guy. Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, the colossal squid. Forget everything you think you know about squid. Forget calamari. Forget those little guys you see in tide pools. Because the colossal squid is built like an underwater tank and weighs up to 495 kilograms. That's over 1,000 pounds. These deep-dwelling nightmares aren't just big. They're terrifying. Their tentacles don't just have suckers. They have rotating, serrated hooks that function like biological grappling equipment. These hooks swivel and lock onto prey, ensuring that whatever the colossal squid grabs does not escape. And just to drive home how dangerously sharp these hooks are, take a look at sperm whales, some of the largest animals on Earth, and many of them are covered in scars. Circular, distinctive scars left by colossal squid hooks during underwater battles that we'll never witness. But if the hooks don't convince you this thing is nightmare fuel, let me tell you about its eyes. The colossal squid has the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. They measure up to 30 centimeters across. That's bigger than a basketball. Your eyes? They're about 2.4 centimeters. So the colossal squid's eyes are over 10 times larger than yours. Why does it need eyes that big? Because down here in the near-total darkness, even the faintest hint of light, bioluminescence from prey, the silhouette of a predator, could mean the difference between eating and starving, between living and dying. These squids typically live around 1,500 meters, or about 5,000 feet. And if you're thinking, well, at least there aren't any giant sharks down there, I have bad news for you. Because there absolutely are. Meet Somniosus pacificus, the Pacific sleeper shark. Don't let the name fool you. This is 7 meters of pure danger. It's closely related to the Greenland shark, which can live for over 400 years, making it one of the longest-lived vertebrates on Earth. And the Pacific sleeper shark might share that same freakish longevity. But here's the kicker. There was one unconfirmed sighting of a sleeper shark that measured 9.2 meters, over 30 feet long. If true, that would make it bigger than most great white sharks. A lot bigger. And unlike great whites, which prefer shallower waters, the sleeper shark prowls the deep, hunting in near-total darkness, moving slowly and methodically, conserving energy in a place where every calorie counts. It's a giant, it's patient, and it's proof that even in the deepest, coldest, most inhospitable parts of the ocean, apex predators still exist. But we're not done descending yet. At 2,000 meters, about 6,500 feet, we've officially entered the abyssopelagic zone, the abyss. Welcome to a place so deep, so dark, and so alien that it makes the midnight zone look cozy. The pressure here is crushing, the temperature is barely above freezing, and food is so scarce that most creatures down here rely on marine snow, a continuous shower of dead organisms, fecal pellets, and organic debris drifting down from the world above. And yet life persists, and it's puzzling, really uncanny. If you looked out your submarine window here, you might see what looks like a giant, prehistoric cockroach scuttling across the seafloor. Except it's not a cockroach, it's a giant isopod, Bathynomus giganteus. If you've ever seen pillbugs, those little roly-polies in your garden, congratulations. You've met the tiny cousins of one of the deep sea's most iconic giants. But while garden pillbugs reach maybe half an inch, these abyssal monsters grow to 50 centimeters long. That's over 1.5 feet. Now imagine a bug that size scurrying across your kitchen floor. Yeah, not great. But what makes giant isopods truly remarkable isn't just their size, it's their patience. When food is scarce, which is basically always in the deep, these creatures enter a state of near-suspended animation. One specimen at Japan's Toba Aquarium went 5 years without eating. 5 years. Can you imagine not eating anything since 2020? I think I'd die. Literally. But the giant isopod? It just waits, conserving energy, barely moving. Until finally, when a whale carcass or some other massive food source drifts down from above, it feasts. And if you thought the isopod looked alien, wait until you see this next one. Colossendes colossea, the giant sea spider. Despite the name, these aren't true spiders. They belong to an ancient lineage that diverged from arthropods hundreds of millions of years ago, and I am fully convinced they came straight out of the movie Alien. Like, tell me this thing doesn't look like a facehugger. Go ahead, try. Most sea spiders are tiny, sometimes just 1 millimeter across, but this deep-sea nightmare has legs that span over 70 centimeters. That's 27 inches, up to 700 times larger than its shallow water relatives. But the truly bizarre aspect of this creature isn't just its size, it's what's inside. See, its internal organs have migrated into its legs because there simply isn't enough room in its tiny body cavity. So imagine if your liver and intestines decided to relocate into your thighs. That's essentially what's happened here. It's an alien. There's no other way to put it. But perhaps the creature that tops everything in terms of sheer eeriness is found near hydrothermal vents, between 2,000 and 3,000 meters deep. Riftia pachyptila, the giant tube worm. These things can grow to 2.4 meters, almost 8 feet tall, and they've evolved so dramatically that they've dispensed with the most basic animal features. They don't have a mouth, they don't have a stomach, they don't have a digestive system. Instead, their bodies house billions of bacteria in a specialized organ called the trophosome. These microscopic partners convert hydrogen sulfide, a chemical so toxic it would kill most animals instantly, into food. And they do all of this in water hot enough to cook food and under pressure that would crush a human like an empty soda can. They defy everything we know about being an animal, and they're thriving. But we're not done yet, because we haven't reached the true bottom. Beyond 6,000 meters, about 19,600 feet, we enter the Hadal zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This zone encompasses the deepest ocean trenches on Earth, the Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Kermadec Trench. These are places that plunge nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. And at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench sits the Challenger Deep, where the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. That's over 14,000 pounds per square inch, equivalent to the weight of an entire skyscraper pressing down on a human-sized area. And guess what? Even here, in the most extreme environment on Earth, there are giants. Meet Alicella gigantea, an oversized amphipod, a distant relative of the tiny beach hoppers you might see jumping around seaweed. While their surface cousins measure just a few millimeters, Alicella has evolved to reach lengths up to 34 centimeters, over 13 inches, with body weights exceeding 500 grams. To put that in perspective, that's like finding an ant the size of a guinea pig in your backyard. So, what's going on here? Why does the deep sea, with all its crushing pressure, frigid temperatures, and scarce resources, produce such oversized life forms? Why does a squid become half a ton? Why does a roly-poly turn into a monster? Why does a worm grow taller than most humans? Well, like most things in nature, there isn't a single answer, just a pile of compelling ones. First, temperature. Down in the deep, it's cold, around 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. That's 35 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And for cold-blooded animals, colder temperatures slow down metabolism dramatically. This allows them to grow more slowly over much longer lifespans. Instead of burning bright and fast like their shallow water relatives, they take their time. Second, food scarcity. The deep sea doesn't have convenient snacks drifting by every few minutes. If you want to survive, you need range, endurance, and a body that can store energy. Bigger animals can travel farther and hold more reserves, allowing them to outlast the long famines between meals. Third, lack of predators. With fewer predators, animals can take their time growing big without getting picked off early. There's no evolutionary pressure to stay small and fast when there's nothing chasing you. And fourth, and this one's counterintuitive, oxygen, or rather the lack of it. There's less oxygen in the deep ocean, and we typically associate more oxygen with larger size. But here's the kicker. Larger bodies in crustaceans actually increase the amount of oxygen they can take in, so bigger size is an adaptation to combat suffocation. It's probably a combination of all these factors. Different animals getting big for different reasons. For some, it's food storage. For others, it's avoiding predators. And for others still, it's just because the ocean decided to get strange with it. But here's the wildest part. These are just some of the giants, because we've barely scratched the surface. We've mapped less than 20% of the ocean floor. Some estimates suggest we've identified fewer than 10% of the species that live down there. And every time we send a submersible or ROV into the deep, we find something new, something bizarre, something that shouldn't exist. So, what else is down there? What other giants are lurking in the trenches we haven't explored yet? Maybe there's something even bigger than the colossal squid. Maybe there's a species of shark we've never seen. Maybe there are entire ecosystems thriving around hydrothermal vents that we don't even know exist. The ocean has always been a place of mystery, a place of monsters, and a place that reminds us just how little we actually know about our own planet. So the next time you look at the ocean and think it's just water and fish, remember, beneath the surface, in the crushing darkness of the deep, there are giants. Giants that defy logic. Giants that shouldn't exist. But they do, because the deeper we look, the more we realize how little we truly understand.